I would say the meat and potatoes of what I do goes back to sitting in Duck's basement and listening to Reject for Living Sacrifice and being like, okay, well, I want to sound like that guy, because it genuinely terrified me at the time, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but there was something about it that sort of, probably the devil, pulling me into doing this death metal. Just a little bit of introduction for you, I think, is in order. So
Cool.
you are the lead singer of the band Living Sacrifice, which I think is fair to say legendary metal band. And Living Sacrifice has been around since what, 89 ish or something.
Yeah, I mean the tail end of '89. We get to say we formed in the '80s because technically it was 1989, but it was like September, and then our first official show was New Year's Eve 1989. So
Awesome.
first show was played in the '80s, and so yeah, I'm super old.
Well, I feel that way too, actually. So one of the last BTA shows that I ever played on tour was with Living Sacrifice, and one of the very first Death Therapy shows I ever played was with Living Sacrifice.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
when we came over to Little Rock and we played for Philip at his church
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and at that show, I had a couple teenage girls come up to me and say, "Oh, my dad used to play your music when I was a baby." And that's when I realized that I've been doing this for a little longer than some people. So, um,
Sure.
yeah, but fun story about that. So I'll tell you my Living Sacrifice story. I've got a few of them. Uh, the first Living Sacrifice story is that Duck, our drummer, the guy who started becoming the Archetype, I would sit in his basement and he would play me music, and he sort of introduced me to all these bands. And we were really into POD, which I know you guys just played some shows with.
Yeah.
And then he showed me this song called Reject and by Living Sacrifice, and I was absolutely terrified of your vocals at the time. I didn't know what to make of the growling and the screaming because I'd never heard anything like that before.
That's
So,
hilarious.
yeah. And so fast forward to 2020, and I did a cover of that song, just because it sort of changed my metal journey. So, so
And
thank you
it
for
was
that.
it was a great cover. It was a really cool take on the song.
Yeah. Um, so then you can fast forward. So like fast forward maybe 8 years, and I want to see if you remember these shows. I must have seen Living Sacrifice play 4 or 5 times in Atlanta, and all of them were done by Concert Mom. Do you remember Concert Mom?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Barb?
Barb.
Yeah. She was awesome. And you guys almost always, when I saw you, played at a place called the Greenhouse in
Yeah.
Atlanta.
Yeah, prior to that we would play at the Strand in Marietta.
Marietta? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we played there a few times. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Concert Mom was the hookup in Atlanta for sure.
Totally. And it's such a weird thing to me to think that that time period, I mean, the bands and the fans were like interconnected in a really cool way. I can remember, like, at the greenhouse, for instance, there was like the little church room, and I'm sure that we always filled it way past the fire capacity, and it was very sweaty in there. And then there was just like another little separate room where the band would go hang out. But I feel like in between, the bands and the fans got to mingle with each other, and that's what got me in. Basically, that's what made me fall in love with doing that and want to play music. So, um,
Awesome.
yeah, getting to see shows like that. So I think if I had grown up on arena rock shows, I might not have been as interested in it. I don't know. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, seeing smaller bands at a more in a more intimate level, kind of kind of shows you like, oh well, this is like these are real people doing real things. Whereas like if you're just seeing a band that's playing an arena, it's like oh, that's untouchable, that's unattainable. But I can go play clubs, play in a club or a coffee house or a church with my band, and people will come out and see that. So yeah.
Totally. I think some of the people that would watch this or listen to this, they can remember these things. They can remember going to these little shows, and there was there's still, obviously, you live in Nashville, so there's club shows. You live in Nashville, right? I got that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's club shows and stuff everywhere. I live more like out in the mountains in Georgia, so there aren't really like bands that come play here. But oddly enough, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I feel like there was nowhere that we couldn't go play and find a church basement somewhere, and they would pack, a couple hundred kids in there. We'd go to the middle of Nebraska, and there was just a scene during that time.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. So,
yeah.
The very first tour that BTA did was with Showbread, and I feel like one of the very first dates we did was at a place in Little Rock called Vino's Pizza.
Yep.
And I was told that somebody from Living Sacrifice at some point worked at Vino's Pizza. Is there truth to this story, or is this a urban legend?
No, yeah, that's true. It was me.
It was you. Sweet.
Yeah.
That place is still there, right?
It is. Yeah. If you actually, I just posted an article last week. There's an oral history of Vino's that's posted on there, and it's got interviews from me and a bunch of people that work there and a bunch of musicians that used to play there, like singer for Lucero is interviewed, and auxiliary guitar player for Green Day, Jason White. We all kind of came out of that scene. They were more on the punk side of things, obviously, but the funny thing about Vino's opened up in 1990.
Yeah.
And that's the first year we were a band. So one of our third show that we ever played was at Vino's, opening for the Hare Krishna core band Shelter.
Oh yeah.
Which was Ray Capo's band from Youth of Today, his band after Youth of Today. And yeah, that was the only place to play in town. So we played Vino's. I wouldn't say a lot, but we probably played it like once or twice a year. Other bands played it like all the time.
Yeah. I feel like every time we did a tour, we always went through there. And several times when I've come through there just on other trips, I've made a stop to get pizza there just because it's a nostalgic memory for me. Because that's sort of where my touring life started.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, I posted the article on my Facebook page, just the oral history thing. And it was written up by the Arkansas Times, which is like a free publication that you can also pick up. But the online version I've posted or whatever. So yeah, I saw Green Day there before they blew up.
Wow.
I saw Fugazi there, Jawbox. Yeah, some pretty awesome shows happen there. But anyways, we play there, and it's a cool place.
Yeah.
And as a club or an all ages club, you go there and you can they give the band pizza.
Totally.
And if you play there, then you just get a pizza for free, and beer because they're a brewery, or Cokes, whatever. But it was always, for the size of the place being a small room, maybe holds 200 people comfortably. We put 500 in it.
Totally.
But
totally.
But yeah, it was always a legit place to play.
Yeah, I think it still is. I've seen.
Yeah, it sure is. It's still there.
Yeah, I've seen a guy that I'm friends with online who I think takes a lot of pictures of shows there. Kurt, you probably know Kurt.
Lunsford, yeah.
Kurt Lunsford, and he's always posting killer photos from shows that are makes me want to go back. So shout out to Vino's. So you said so. Um, there was like there were some punk shows going on. There were some
Mhm.
metal stuff going on. Um, I feel like I saw Living Sacrifice on tour at least at some point with not with punk bands. I mean, you may have toured with punk bands, but I know I saw you with like new metal bands. Feel like I saw you tour at some point with Project 86 or POD um, at some point, or am I mixing my shows together?
No, yeah, we toured with both bands, in different,
Yeah, I
different
mean
times
you just
and
did some shows
together.
with
I mean,
POD, yeah,
yeah, and together. But I mean, even back, in the '90s, we did shows with those guys, and then in the early 2000s for sure.
yeah,
Sure,
and,
yeah.
and what that makes me think of is I I don't know, maybe I just don't go to enough shows anymore because I'm getting older, but I feel like a lot of the tours that come out now don't blend genres the same way that I saw when I was growing up. I feel like I would go see a show that would have like a ska band and a hip hop artist and a new metal band, and then a metal band would close out the night or something. And now I feel like
Yeah.
if I go see a show, it's like the tour manager put five bands that all sound the same to me on the ticket. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of miss that eclectic. We all felt like we were part of a like underground punk attitude, even if we were different styles.
I think also it was out of necessity probably a little bit back then,
For
because
sure.
believe me, we were pitching ourselves to like Machine Head tours.
Right.
But we weren't getting them. So
Right. Did you guys ever land any tours like that were notable?
I mean, we did we did a tour with we did short runs with Malevolent Creation and um uh Nile,
Mm-hmm.
and even Cannibal Corpse.
Wow. Yeah.
And then kind of in the early 2000s, we did a run with, like, these weren't big bands. We were actually headlining this run, but it was like, Sky Came Falling, Haste, the band Haste, not Haste the Day, but there's a
Right.
band from Birmingham called Haste,
Mm-hmm.
hardcore band, and then yeah, you know,
Yeah, I think I saw you guys come to. I mean, you were more peers than like. It's not like they were a big band or anything, but I think I saw you guys come one time to Atlanta with Demon Hunter, um, when they were sort of stretching their legs and starting to tour. Because at first, I think they were kind of a little bit of a studio thing. Like
yeah,
created in super group is what I mean. Super group
yeah, for
at the
sure,
beginning.
yeah. Also, just great buds of ours, friends, and
Totally.
yeah. That was actually the tour where we reformed. That was 2008.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't realize that.
yeah. We came off a 5-year hiatus and did that tour and put out 2 songs, and then started working on the Infinite Order.
That's right. I remember the two songs, and I actually also can remember. I think I remember that at one point. This is going back, but I remember a 2-song cassette that I had pre-hammering process. I feel like was that a thing that Solid State did?
Yep.
Put a couple songs on
Yeah,
a
yeah. They
cassette.
they put some. Yeah, we didn't have the record ready, but they wanted to put something out for.
Cornerstone.
They always wanted to capitalize on all the kids at Cornerstone. So it was
Totally.
like, well, what can we give away or
Right.
put out? What can we promote in anticipation of whatever.
We did the
And
same
so
thing. Yeah.
yeah. So 2-song cassette was easy and cheap, and I think there were demo versions of some songs that were ended up on the record.
Yeah. So hammering process is an interesting thing to talk about. So for me at least, I mean, is a transformative time for the band. Had some member changes come back from that, but I mean, obviously Reborn was a big record. Or am I wrong about that? I mean, at the time, was it? I mean, now it's considered legendary, but I don't know how it hit at the time.
I mean, it was new. It was transitionary for us, obviously, because I became the vocalist,
Right.
and the sound, because of that, the sound changed, the music changed, but it was still very much in the vein of what we did,
Right.
even if you kind of went back to the first album. But we, obviously we're just trying to branch out and try different things, and not be kind of, put in, not paint ourselves into so much of a box, or a genre, of metal, and so yeah, I mean, I think, probably not at first, but when it came out, it gained us a ton of new fans.
Yeah.
I mean, up to that point, it became our most successful record, and up to that point, and until we put out Hammering Process, and then that record did, slightly better or whatever, as far as sales go, and as far as the amount of touring we did and the type of shows and things like that. But I mean, it was a build from Reborn to that. We definitely between Reborn and Hammering Process, and then after, I mean, that we did the most touring that we had ever done. We probably did 200 shows a year,
Totally,
for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and I feel like I read somewhere, and this is not meant to be a joke. I just like literally don't know the answer to this question. I feel like I've read somewhere, people, like a urban legend, that when Hammering Process came out, you were interviewed or asked by somebody if Meshuggah had been a big influence on you in writing the Hammering Process. And the legend of this story goes that you told them, "No, I don't listen to Meshuggah." Is that true or false? Or is there any ring of truth to that?
I cannot imagine saying anything like that, because
Okay.
by the time we did Hammering Process, I mean, we absolutely listened to Meshuggah. They were awesome. Here's my Meshuggah story, because it is pretty significant, in the sense that we the first time we heard them was after we had finished Reborn.
Mm-hmm.
And Reborn had some, a little bit of odd timing things to it, and but I mean, we're not like Meshuggah whatsoever at all. But we'd finished, we actually were going on tour for Reborn, and somebody gave us a cassette of Destroy, Erase, Improve on one side and None on the other. And they're like, "Hey, have you heard of this band, Meshuggah?" Well, no, never heard of them. And they gave us the cassette. I mean, I remember this because we were on tour and it was after show. Popped it in, and I don't even remember who gave it to us, but it must have been somebody that we liked and trusted to actually put a cassette in, because random, it wasn't a random person, put it that way, because it wasn't like, "Hey, listen to my demo."
Right. Totally. Which I probably did to you at some point.
So to finish that story, we put the cassette in, and in the van, driving probably overnight to the next show or whatever, and we just listened to that thing over and over again, and we were like, "What is going on?"
Yeah.
I mean, it was impactful for sure. So that's why I say I can't imagine ever saying I'd never heard them, unless I was describing never hearing them before,
prior to that,
prior to Reborn.
Right.
Because we hadn't, and that's one memory that is very clear. So by the time, you know, we had gotten between Reborn and Hammer Process was like 3 years. So by the time we got to Hammer Process, I mean, we absolutely, you know, had heard him or listened to him, but and I'm sure they influenced some of the things, some of what we did, but Hammering Process, you know, I mean, dude, I was pulling from all kinds of places, even, you know, kind of starting back from Reborn, you know, bands like Helmet and Quicksand and, you know, post punk, you know, rock and metal. And so, you know, we were definitely trying to pull in more influences, put it that way.
Totally. I know that Van Halen was a big guitar hero of yours, right? Growing up, or no?
Absolutely. Yeah. He's the first, they were there. That was the first real band I ever heard for the first time when I maybe I was 10, and I was just like before that, you know, you grow up, you're listening to music and you're just listening to like whatever crappy,
whatever my parents listened to was what I listened
to. Whatever crappy stuff was on the radio, or
right.
or you know, Disco Duck. I had that album. Village People, you know, Court, you know, had that album. Right. Why not? But in 1980, I was 10 years old in 1982, so you know, Van Halen was like, you know, massive, but it was actually the first album I heard, and you know, it was just because my older brother had it, and yeah, it changed my life. I was like, it was like I'm hearing music for the first time. This is real music, you know.
Yeah.
Not Disco Duck or the Village People or pop or whatever. It's like, this is a thing. So Van Halen was my introduction into heavy rock and then ultimately metal. It's hard to call them a metal band, but they definitely have some heavy riffs.
Yeah, there's no way to say that modern guitar playing, like high gain guitar playing, could exist without the influence of Eddie Van Halen. So losing him was a huge loss.
Yeah,
on the music community. So you guys just did some shows with POD, but before that, last year you did Furnace Fest. What was that like? Furnace Fest.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. It was great. I mean, one, I was stoked to see all, you know, a lot of those bands that played, you know, and some old friends of mine and things like that. And, you know, I mean,
did you guys play the original Furnace Fest, or were you just, because it happened multiple times, right? Back in the day?
Yeah, we did. We played, I think, the first 2 years.
Awesome.
Yeah. I don't think we played the third year. I can't remember if it went 3 years or 4 years, but we didn't play the last year that they held it, but we played the first 2 years, and it was fun. It was great. But this year, or this last year, I mean, there was a lot of people.
I know, it's nuts.
So it was kind of like, you know, these people didn't come to the original Furnace Fest because there's only like 2,000 people at that one.
Right.
But this past year, there was like 10,000. So three stages, you know, pretty awesome. And yeah, the crowd was great. And, you know, we don't get the opportunity to play in front of that many people that often who know our songs and our music and are just, you know, into it. So yeah, it was great. It was awesome.
Yeah. I saw some videos from it. I didn't get a chance to go. But it looked like a blast. And, I mean, people singing along and go, like the mosh pit was nuts. And, one of the things that this is something that only a person who's in a band would think, is like, I thought to myself, you know, of all these bands, because I mean, I don't know how many bands there were, like 90 bands or something playing.
Yeah.
I was like, Living Sacrifice has got to be in the small handful of bands that get up on the stage and like, you're not using backing tracks, you're not using in-ear monitors. Or am I mistaken about that? Maybe Jeremiah hooked you up with some sweet in-ears recently, but you guys are old school, right?
I've never used in-ears.
There you go. Jeremiah did make you sound awesome. By the way, he's a great sound guy.
Yeah. I mean, the videos sound great, sound heavy. That particular, I'd forgotten how kind of echoey that
Furnaces.
yeah, the furnace is. But that's the stage with all the character, you know. Any of the other stages are like kind of like just outdoor festivals type stages, whereas that stage is like that's Furnace Fest, you know.
Totally.
So I was into it, and yeah, honestly, to your point though, I don't recall seeing any band that played that show played there with any type of backing tracks, so to speak.
Interesting.
Because those just aren't the bands that they book, you know.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Maybe that's part of why it was such a special thing. I guess it just so.
Well, I take that back.
Yep.
There were probably some bands on the bigger stage that might have had that going on. Also I'm not from I wasn't not familiar with some of the larger bands that are around now. You know, there was definitely several bands I'm not familiar with. You know,
Yeah. I just
and
think
they were playing the big stage, like
yeah.
super popular band. Like was that Motionless in White or something like that? Never.
Right. Motionless
I mean,
in
I've
White,
heard of them, but I don't know anything about them.
Knocked Loose, I think, or did they play or
I don't
the
know.
really big hardcore band? But yeah, it's a weird thing because with becoming
I was there to
Archetype, we
see.
never used backing tracks or anything, and now I feel like if there were to be a BTA reunion, like just to keep up with the way how huge all these bands sound now with like the sub drops and the orchestras behind them and stuff. When I go see a show, I'm like, man, I feel like we would need to either hire other musicians or play with a
Yeah.
backing track. But there's something special about the drummer is just he's your metronome, and Lance is amazing. And
Yeah.
that. So to me, I guess that's what I'm reminiscing on is just sort of like
I mean, that's part of our sound. I think,
yeah.
I mean, records are produced, of course, but when you see us play live, I mean, it's us, and
Totally.
mess ups and all, but there's something
You don't
kind
use any auto tune on your voice?
of if I actually sang in like any type of like key or had a pitch, then maybe there would be, but no. It's there's a rawness to it, and
Yeah.
I like how we sound live. It sounds different than the records, but still hopefully good,
I think there's a thing about that that's really humanizing and keeps it. I don't know how else to say it other than I mean bands can sound absolutely perfect and sound just like the record playing with backing tracks, and Death Therapy plays with backing tracks because I have like keyboard stuff and I don't usually have a keyboard player with me.
Sure.
But there's a level at which when everybody does that, I almost feel like it steals a little bit of the imperfection and the humanity from it. Like I watched a performance, I feel like last year of a show Eric Clapton did very recently. And you could tell that like there were times when the band was trying to like hit a chord at the same time and they just didn't nail it. But then they sort of looked at each other and smiled and like there's something charming about it. And I mean,
Yeah.
obviously that's not metal. That's you can't smile.
Well,
In metal.
it's funny. Playing with POD just recently. I mean, they're not playing to any kind of tracks at all. I
Right.
mean, those guys are just good. And Marcos broke a string in a song. They just stopped
Yeah.
completely. Said, switched out his guitar, tuned up real quick, and Sonny's like, he's like, this is why we don't play the backing tracks.
Yeah. Totally.
You know,
Yeah, because you can then you're kind of at the mercy
yeah.
of the
They just basically launch right back into the song, and
but that's kind of
I don't know.
fun.
I'm not against it. I think they have their place.
Totally.
It's just not something that we've ever done,
Right.
and I'm not saying I would ever not do it with some other type of configuration, but it never made sense for Living Sacrifice. So
Totally. I mean, and like I say, I'm speaking as somebody who for the last 6 years I haven't played anything without backing tracks. But I didn't grow up that way. And I mean, I didn't grow up with in-ear monitors. It was all just the wedges. And honestly, we got used to when we were touring, just telling the sound guy, like, I just need a little bit of my voice and we can go, because we didn't feel any reason to sit there and like belabor the point and sound like divas, you know?
Sure.
And I think the only thing that we ever did that was artificial was Duck would use triggers on his kick drum, but that was totally out of like just to simplify, so that we didn't have to worry if the sound guy in some random church knew how to make a metal kick drum sound, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was about it. But I'm also older now, and I can't scream for nearly as long as I used to be able to. Like until I got maybe 4 or 5 songs in, I swear I would get like 3 phrases into the song, and I was like, I'm done. I need to take a break. My voice is shot.
Well, you know, my style of yelling is full volume throat.
Same.
And I can only do a song a night.
I hear that. I feel that. I feel like when I do play shows, like when we do more stuff, it builds up.
That ends up being about 3 hours of me screaming.
Right.
You know,
totally.
Like just trying different things, you know, phrasing, whatever, you know, yeah. It's not straightforward. Like I've got my lyrics. I know where they fit, but how they're going to execute, you know, sometimes I'm doubling, whatever.
Right. Totally. And I try to do all the stuff that they say you're supposed to do, like drink the tea and do the vocal warm-ups, and none of it ever matters, because I think part of what I'm, and you're probably the same way, what I'm doing vocally is all wrong according to the experts. But that's part of how I sound. Like so people will ask me sometimes on the internet, they'll say, well, what's your secret? How do I do vocals like you? And I'm like, I just yell as loud as you can, you know, and put a little gravel in it. I'm not, you know what I mean? I think there's some guys like Corey Taylor from Slipknot or somebody, like he can do a 3.5 hour show and wake up the next day and do another 3.5 hour show.
Yeah.
He's doing something special with his voice that I don't have.
Well, I mean, I can do back-to-back shows. I don't have a problem with that at all. Like even after these shows runs with POD. Now, granted, we had a short set, but yeah, I was fine. You know, it wasn't that big of a deal. And yeah, I don't do
in the studio. You're given a little bit more.
The studio's different because it's very, you know, it's you hear everything, and it's very, you know, you're honing in on like nuance, and you're trying to like, well, I mean, for guys like us, it's like, okay, we're screaming the whole time, so it's like, how do we make this interesting?
Right.
Totally. You know, I'm not singing melodies or harmonizing with myself or anything like that. So it's like, yeah, you know, but yeah, dude,
and you don't do pig squeals.
I don't do. What's that?
You're not familiar with the pig squeal vocals that are real popular? Like, have you seen the clip of the guy from the band Lorna Shore going around where he does the, like, you'll have to look it up. He does this crazy thing with his voice where it almost seems like he's making animal noises, and then he like does this crazy squeal that's like, it was all the rage last year, and they've blown up as a band because of it.
Interesting.
It was
I'm not familiar at all.
Yeah, it's not a band I listened to, but or I had not listened to them, I guess is what I should say. But people will ask me like, "Oh, do you do pig squeals?" And I'm like, I legitimately don't know how to do.
I mean, that sounds like a guitar thing, like, you know.
Well, like pinch harmonics, or or it's something out of the movie Deliverance or something. So something.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, I do warm up in the studio, but I don't do warm ups before a show necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how. And so I just find my range and I ease into it, and then I get stronger
Totally.
as the night goes if I do it right. Now I have there will be times where if I can't hear myself, I push too far or I
Right.
push too much, and it all gets screwed up. But these shows we just played recently, I mean, all the sound, all the venues were awesome, and the sound was the monitors and the onstage sound was killer. So it was it was easy. But yeah, dude, I think you have one of the strongest, coolest voices in metal for sure.
Well, I appreciate that.
As far as screaming goes, because I don't listen to a lot of guys that scream,
Mhm.
because just like I don't know, it's just it can be boring or monotonous or whatever.
Right.
You know, I prefer guys, guys that can sing a little bit or like yell or scream in pitch or something like that, which I can't do, very well at all or at all. And but yeah, I mean, you always do interesting stuff, and it's like it just fits.
That's what I'm trying to do, but I mean, I would say the meat and potatoes of what I do goes back to sitting in Duck's basement and listening to Reject for Living Sacrifice and being like, okay, well, I want to sound like that guy, because it genuinely terrified me at the time, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but there was something about it that sort of, probably the devil, pulling me into doing this death metal, thing, but I also think, to your point, I think that like so a band like Meshuggah, it's not about the vocals. I'm not saying he's not a great vocalist. He's a legendary vocalist, but he doesn't do a ton of like different
Yeah, I mean,
styles. It's all about the riffs, and it's all about the. So then a band like that I can get into, but if it's sort of just like a metal, just a generic metal core or
yeah,
metal whatever band, and the singer's just doing the like arf 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 kind of thing all the time,
yeah,
eventually I'm like,
yeah,
okay, I got nothing here to grab onto,
yeah. No, I
So
mean, he's very he what he does fits the song and the tune, and it is what it is. I mean, he doesn't stray. I mean, even the new song that just came out, it's like, well, that's Meshuggah.
100%, and they're still giving people that experience that you had,
Yeah,
um, when you heard it the first time. Because I have some friends online that are much younger than I am, and um, talking about how this will be my first Meshuggah record, and I'm like, what? And
well, here's my take on that, because I mean, I definitely, I got into Destroy, Erase, Improve, which is like, I think their second album,
mhm.
and then Chaos Sphere,
Chaos Fear's revolutionary.
and but Chaos Sphere is kind of like where they took that left turn of like, okay, this is our thing and this is what we're doing, and they kind of narrowed it down, their sound. I feel like they narrowed down their sound, but they've kept it very super interesting, obviously,
Hmm.
and they created a thing,
Right.
obviously, almost a genre, if you will. But I really love the dynamics of None and the EP None and Destroy Erase.
Yeah.
I just those songs and those albums have more space, and they're not quite so dense.
Right.
But
And
also,
there's dynamics. I mean, there's a lot of,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. To me,
Anyway,
that's my favorite stuff. Like, I mean, I'm assuming, or maybe this is something that was more of an influence on Rocky. I don't know, but like, there's a lot of stuff on Hammering Process and Conceived in Fire that's really got that like dynamic, like Metallica almost influenced sort of like clean guitar with the big sparkly lead solo kind of thing. It reminds me of like, old Metallica or something.
for
Um,
sure. Yeah.
and to me, like those parts just make the heavy parts better, if that makes any sense. They make the heavy parts sound heavier because it's like I need a little breather for a minute. So, I saw Cannibal Corpse one time, and it was physically painful for me. Like when the show was over, I just felt like the subwoofers were hitting me in the chest the whole show. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Maybe that's an experience that some people need, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
I like the dynamics more. So anyway,
me too.
yeah. Well, we could probably talk just about anything and everything, but I should be respectful of your time. I think we've probably been talking long enough. So
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Appreciate it.
All right, man. See you.